The millionaire had everything: money, power, luxury. But when his only son fell gravely ill, even the world's best doctors failed to save him. Just as hope slipped away, someone unexpected stepped forward. Not a doctor, not a scientist, but a humble black maid, armed only with her grandmother's ancient wisdom. What happened next shocked everyone and changed their lives forever. No doctor could fix him. The boy's life was slipping away, and the millionaire's mansion had turned into a house of despair. The air inside was heavy, filled with the constant beeping of medical machines and the quiet sobs of a father who once thought money could solve every problem. Richard Graham, a man who had built empires and bought everything he ever wanted, now sat powerless at the bedside of his only child. His fortune, his fame, his power, none of it mattered as he watched Ethan's small, frail body sink deeper into weakness. Ethan, his beloved son, had once been the brightest light in the house. He was cheerful, full of laughter, always running through the halls with boundless energy. But those memories now felt like a cruel reminder of what had been lost. For months, he had been battling a mysterious illness that no one could name. The world's finest doctors had come and gone, some from Europe, others from America, all carrying their briefcases filled with hope. But each left defeated, shaking their heads and muttering words Richard had grown to despise. "We're sorry. There's nothing more we can do." Day after day, the boy's condition worsened. His voice had become nothing more than a whisper. Sometimes, Richard leaned in close just to catch a single word. And one evening, as the machines hummed and nurses moved quietly around, Ethan turned his pale face toward his father and said, "Dad, I'm tired." Those 3 words shattered Richard more than any business loss ever could. He gripped his son's hand tightly, refusing to let go, as though his strength alone could keep the boy alive. Richard had built his life believing that money was the answer to every problem. Need respect? Buy it. Want success? Build it. Desire comfort? Purchase it. But here, in this room filled with doctors, medicines, and machines worth millions, his wealth was useless. For the first time in his life, Richard Graham felt completely helpless. The mansion, once lively with parties, guests, and laughter, had turned into a silent tomb. Servants moved quietly, their eyes filled with pity. Every corner of the house seemed to echo with despair. Just when all hope seemed gone, when Richard thought he would lose the one person he loved most, the most unexpected person in the house, a quiet black maid named Grace, was about to change everything. Richard had once been proud of his success. He owned companies, cars, and mansions. He had traveled the world, dined with kings, and been called one of the most powerful men in the city. Yet, none of those things could soothe the pain gnawing at his heart. His only son's health was crumbling before his very eyes, and no trophy, no deal, no empire could fix it. For the first time in his life, Richard felt the weight of true powerlessness. Doctors from London, Paris, and New York had all delivered the same heartbreaking verdict. "We don't know what's wrong. We can only keep him comfortable." Those words were like daggers. Comfortable? Richard didn't want his son comfortable. He wanted him alive, laughing, and running through the halls again. What good was money if it couldn't buy back his child's smile? Each night became a ritual of pain. Richard sat by Ethan's bedside, gripping his son's small hand, afraid to let go. He would stroke his hair, whisper stories, and force a smile he didn't feel. The boy who once filled their mansion with laughter was now too weak to play, laugh, or even smile. His chest rose and fell with difficulty, his lips cracked, his eyes dull. Every labored breath sounded like time slipping away. The mansion itself seemed to share in the grief. Once a place of glittering parties, where music and laughter spilled into the night, it was now silent. Curtains remained drawn, the halls eerily quiet. Servants moved softly, their footsteps cautious, as though even the smallest sound might break the fragile life clinging to Ethan's body. And then, one evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of sorrow, the family's maid Grace entered the room. She was carrying a tray of soup, her hands steady though her heart was heavy. She saw Richard hunched beside his son, his face buried in exhaustion. Her heart ached for him, not for the millionaire, but for the father. Gathering her courage, Grace whispered softly, "Sir, may I say something?" Richard raised his tired eyes. He had no strength left to argue, no energy for pride. He simply nodded. Grace took a deep breath. "I grew up in a small village in Africa. We had no hospitals, no machines, no famous doctors. But my grandmother, she was a healer. She saved many children with natural remedies passed down for generations. Remedies made with herbs, oils, and love. If you'll allow me, I would like to try something for Ethan." Richard blinked at her, stunned. A maid? Suggesting a cure when the world's top doctors had failed? The thought almost sounded insulting. Yet, when he looked back at Ethan, his son's fragile chest rising with difficulty, his lips barely forming a weak smile, his pride collapsed. His heart shattered all over again. What did he truly have to lose? He stared at Grace for a long moment. Then, in a broken voice, he whispered, "Do whatever you can. Just save my boy." That night, Grace walked quietly into the vast, empty kitchen. The polished counters and gleaming appliances seemed so far removed from the humble kitchens of her childhood. Yet she knew that what mattered wasn't the place, but the intention behind her work. She opened the small wooden box she had carried with her since arriving at the mansion, a box that held dried herbs, oils, and powders, fragments of her grandmother's wisdom that she had never dared to use until now. Her fingers lingered over the herbs as she recalled the old woman's voice. "These are not just plants, Grace. They carry the blessings of the earth. Use them with care, use them with love, and they will answer." With trembling hands, she mixed honey with crushed leaves, adding a few drops of oil. She stirred slowly, whispering, "Grandmother, guide me. Let this work for the boy." Her eyes filled with tears, not from fear of failure, but from the immense hope swelling in her heart. By dawn, Grace was ready. She stepped into Ethan's room, where Richard sat slumped in a chair, his face pale from sleepless nights. He looked up at her with eyes filled with desperation, silently pleading for a miracle. Grace approached the bedside, holding the small bowl close to her chest as though it were something sacred. With gentle hands, she offered the first spoonful to Ethan, whispering soft words of comfort. Unlike the sharp smell of hospital medicines, this remedy carried the sweet, soothing fragrance of honey and herbs. Ethan's lips trembled as the mixture touched his tongue. Richard leaned in, watching every breath, every twitch. To his surprise, his son's face relaxed ever so slightly. Grace continued, spoon by spoon, her calm voice wrapping around the boy like a blanket of reassurance. Over the next several days, her care became part of Ethan's routine. She massaged his frail chest with warm oil until his breathing eased. She created bowls of steaming water infused with healing leaves, guiding him to inhale deeply as she hummed lullabies from her village, songs meant to carry strength into tired souls. Slowly but surely, Ethan's condition began to shift. The rattling in his chest grew quieter. His coughs were less harsh, and most miraculously, a faint spark began to return to his dull eyes. At first, the doctors dismissed it. "This is nonsense," one of them muttered with folded arms. "Folk remedies won't change medical reality." But as the days went on, even their clinical eyes could not deny the truth unfolding before them. Ethan was improving, and it wasn't because of their machines. It was because of the quiet maid whose hands carried love, faith, and the wisdom of generations. Within 2 weeks, the impossible unfolded before their very eyes. Ethan, who had once been too weak to even sit up without help, pushed himself from his bed and, with trembling determination, took his first steps across the room. At first, Richard thought he was dreaming. He rubbed his eyes, certain it couldn't be real. But then he heard it, the sound he thought he might never hear again. Ethan laughed, a bright, joyful laugh that bounced off the cold walls of the mansion and filled it with light, like sunlight breaking through dark clouds after a storm. Richard's heart nearly burst. He stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. His son, his precious boy who had been given no chance, was now walking, laughing, even twirling in the middle of the room as though he had never been sick. Tears spilled freely down Richard's face. He had spent countless nights praying, begging, and bargaining with fate. Now, those prayers had been answered in the most unexpected way. The doctors who had once filled the mansion with their confident voices now stood in silence, their faces pale with disbelief. Charts and test results in hand, they could not explain what had happened. One of them finally admitted, "Scientifically, we can't explain this." Their medical knowledge, vast and expensive, had reached its limits. And yet a simple maid, with nothing but her grandmother's remedies and an ocean of compassion, had succeeded where they had failed. But Richard didn't care about explanations anymore. For the first time in his life, he let go of a need for logic and control. All he cared about was that his son was alive, laughing, and full of energy again. He knew one thing with absolute certainty. Grace, the maid everyone had overlooked, had saved his son's life. It didn't take long for the news to spread beyond the mansion's walls. Whispers turned into headlines, and soon people from all over the city, and even beyond, came to hear the story. The tale of the millionaire's son, cured not by doctors or machines, but by the ancient wisdom of a humble maid, captured hearts everywhere. People came from far and wide to meet Grace, bringing their children, their loved ones, their hopes. Many called her a living angel. Others bowed in respect, saying she carried a gift from God himself. And through it all, Grace remained humble, reminding everyone that what she had done was not magic, but love. Richard realized something powerful that day. Money and titles mean nothing if you lack humanity. All the wealth he had built, all the companies he owned, all the awards he had collected meant nothing compared to the gift of life that Grace had restored to his son. For years, he had measured people by their status, their achievements, and the influence they carried. But now, as he looked at Grace, he understood that true greatness was not found in wealth or fame. It was found in compassion, sacrifice, and love. He gathered the entire household staff in the great hall of the mansion. Everyone stood quietly, unsure of why they had been called. Richard, his voice trembling with emotion, looked at Grace and said with tears in his eyes, "Grace is not just a maid. She is family. She has done what no doctor, no amount of money, and no machine could do. She gave me back my son. From today, she will never serve us again, because she deserves a higher place in this home and in our hearts." The staff gasped, and some even wept. Grace herself stood frozen, her hands clasped tightly together, overwhelmed by his words. She had never sought recognition, never dreamed of being honored in such a way. For her, saving Ethan had been an act of love, not ambition. But now, the man who once barely noticed her existence was lifting her up with gratitude and respect. Richard didn't stop there. He asked Grace what her greatest dream was. After some hesitation, she softly replied, "I always wished I could open a healing center, a place where children and families could receive care, just like my grandmother gave to our village." Without a second thought, Richard promised to sponsor it fully. He poured his wealth not into another mansion or luxury car, but into Grace's vision. Months later, the healing center opened its doors. It was a simple but beautiful place filled with the aroma of herbs, the sound of laughter, and the warmth of care. Grace dedicated it to her grandmother's legacy, naming it after the woman whose wisdom had saved countless lives. Families from every background came, seeking remedies, comfort, and hope. Ethan grew up healthy and strong, but he never forgot the woman who saved him. Often, he would run into Grace's arms and hug her tightly, whispering, "You're my second mom." Those words melted her heart every time. And so, in a mansion where despair once lived, hope and gratitude now blossomed. The story of the maid who did the impossible lived on, reminding everyone that sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected hearts. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.